Hi, this is going to be a video on a little introduction and a bit of a how-to for the game Dixie Bull Run. The game Dixie has two other versions. You have Dixie Bull Run, Dixie Shiloh, and Dixie Gettysburg. I understand Gettysburg is out of stock they're all from Columbia Games. But these two can still be bought from their website, and you can get Gettysburg second-hand if you look for it. I bought my set second-hand. Now, this Bull Run edition, I have two boxes, and one is version 2.0 rules, and the other is the original rules. I'm not sure which box is which, but you can see there's different backs, or are those the fronts? I guess those are the fronts to them. For my Bull Run, we have Grant. There you've got Joseph E. Johnston. So I think that's the sort of the more modern. And Gettysburg, you've got Lee on it. But anyway, you can play with either edition of rules. I don't think there's a huge difference. I didn't check. There's also, on Columbia Games' website, you can download the sort of consolidated rules. So these are 2006. I think these first came out in the 90s. This is the latest version of rules. And what this has is it's consolidated all of it, so it has rules for all three decks. There are some slight differences to each one, them illustrating different battles. Now, the first thing to note with this game is that you only need, to get into it, you only need one deck. That gives you 60 cards, and that would be 30 a side. I've got two decks because that then gives you opportunity for a bit of deck construction. Okay, so here's my two rules sets. I'm going to use version 2.0 for this, and so the basic game is you play with a 30 card deck each. For example, in Shiloh that's a bit different. You have a different number of... No, I think it's in Gettysburg. The Confederates start with more, Union less, so forth. But you start... But anyway, so we're talking about Bull Run today. So Bull Run, you start with 30 cards each, which would be half of an original deck. And then you go from there. Now, if you have more decks, there is a point system, and you can build up according to the point system. So they talk about a battle deck, which is 30 cards each. That's the basic. Then custom battle decks, you're using battle points. Each card has its points here. So the generals go from 20 to 15 to 10 to 5 points. And then the other figures, these are cavalry. They're 4 and 6. Then you have infantry, ranging from sort of, these are the weakest 3 up to, I haven't got any up there at the moment, but you get 4 pointers. That's 3 pointer worth 9. Then you have artillery of different types. And then you get into special cards. So that's 5, 10, etc. And then also terrain. I think all the terrain are 10 cards. There you go. There's a 4 pointer infantry fellow on 12. Worth 12 points, nearly as much as a general. Now, or as much as some generals. Now, so the standard game of 30 cards, you start out with a battle line. You can see it illustrated there, but it's essentially each side will have, you might have, say, 3 terrain, and you have some fellows in it, and then your opponent, let's say he hasn't got any terrain, he has 3 fellows opposite, and he's got a battle line such as this. So you have 3 and 3, and then whatever's in your hand is considered the reserve, and you can play from your hand into this position or this position or this position. Once you're in these positions, you can only go forward or backward, and you can go back into the reserve. So you can't go across like that. There's no movement that way. You can attack that way. And because there's not a great deal of movement, it's not a problem that you can't go sideways. So you basically start with your left, right and centre line. There's your battle lines, and then you go. Now the rules offer another version, which is expanded battle lines. So they say if you have 50 cards aside instead of the regular 30, you can fight larger battles with 5 battle lines. So, and that works exactly the same way. So again, there's no lateral movement. It's just straight ahead. But there is some variation as well. Apart from the attacking, you can also have flank attacks, which gives a kind of like a sideways movement. I'll explain that later. So if you have more than one deck, you can do this easily. And then there's even a third option. Again, these are downloaded from the Columbia website. You have historical bull run for Columbia's Dixie. So in this one, you have a middle row. So you have this back row, and these, where they have the cards illustrated here, these are actual terrain cards, and the dots are without particular terrain. So here you have upper bull run, bull run, bull run, lower bull run, and you have Stone's Bridge. So it illustrates the river running down the middle of the main bit of the battlefield there. And then you have 5 behind and 5 behind here. So that is just like this, but with an extra line in here. So you can see there's a bit more. You have your back line, and then you have the sort of territory, contested territory in the middle. And then you also have 3 reserve areas. So these reserves can feed into 3 points each, and you have a rear reserve which can feed into the left or right reserve. So that gives you a bit more scope for manoeuvre and thought on what you're doing. However, even though I've got 2 decks, I can't actually play this scenario because each deck is a random mixture of cards, and I don't know if it's completely random or if they say you will get so many generals and so many infantry. So if it's completely random, obviously, if you're exceedingly unlucky, you could get a deck full of generals and nothing else. But I don't know if that's ever happened. But anyway, what I'm saying is that although I've got 2 decks, I've only got that many Union cards, and I've got this many Confederate cards. What that means is that I don't have enough. They actually give you the cards. Each card has a number on it here, and you're not allowed to field any duplicates. So I guess that means that the standard random deck is not completely random, because they wouldn't give you duplicates. So you can't have 2 Thomas Jackson generals, for example, and each card is absolutely beautifully illustrated individually. So that's the 4th Virginia, and then you have the 8th South Carolina, then you have the 7th South Carolina. Each one is absolutely individual. So if you do get 2 8th South Carolinas, you can't feel them both at the same time. Now, because of my mix, I actually would, just so I can fill out the historical deployment. I don't have exactly all of the cards there, so I'd have to sort of double up with some guys to fill my Confederates. The Unions, I just don't have enough. I don't have enough Union cards to do that. That was just the luck of my draw. So I'm looking to perhaps buy another deck. I'd rather get a deck of just Union, but you see what I'm saying, to fill this out. So So that's essentially 3 ways to play. From the basic deck, you can just play with 3 positions each. If you get another deck, you could play 5 positions each. And if, for example, you have enough cards, or you have bought the whole set, there's 200 in each, so there's 200 Bull Run cards that you can collect. You can buy them in each card individually from Columbia Games. So if you had bought all of them, then you could, and or you somehow had enough decks, you could play the historical Bull Run, which looks great from. So today we're just going to play the basic battle decks and battle line game. So I think I'll talk a little bit about the cards, and then we'll get into the rules, and then we'll do a demonstration game. So let's get some representatives. We'll get a general from each, then we'll get cavalry from each side, some artillery, representative artillery, and then infantry, some terrain, and some specials. Okay. Now yeah, I didn't get many specials with the my union. Okay, so I think that's enough to have a good look-see. So the generals, each one's distinct individual. There's James Longstreet, that's the highest value. You can see these are the highest values. He has 2 on attack and 2 on defence. Now the generals don't add that in actual attacks, but they add those numbers to morale saving rolls. So units that take hits have to make a morale saving roll in their next turn. So that's essentially what the generals do. There's in the other games, it's not in this Bull Run. I think Bull Run was the first game they released, so they sort of tweaked the rules a bit with Shiloh, and then again with Gettysburg. In the others, some generals can add stacking capability, but that's not the case here in Bull Run. So that's the best type of general. Here's another representative general. We've got Ambrose Burnside. So he's worth half of what Longstreet was. And we'll just show you some other variations. So he gives nothing on attack, but he's going to help your fellows stand firm on defence. And he's only worth 5. So essentially you get that they're worth 5 points for each one they get there. Here's another example. There's Sherman. So he's going to help your guys as they're moving into attack more than on defence. So that's the general card. Then you have the cavalry cards. This introduces the main sort of point. These what do they call this? That's called the combat value, which is used for firepower and for morale saving rolls. So combat values range from 1 to 4. And this cavalry fellow is dismounted, but still cavalry can move twice normally, and generals can move twice. So you could move, say with cavalry, you could move from reserve to your battle line and then forward into an enemy position and engage there in one go, and also with your generals. With your infantry and your artillery, you'll be moving from reserve to your battle line, or from your battle line to engage the enemy. That either or. So we have the artillery. You see there's a fair bit of information on there, but this is all just for historical interest. All artillery can target 2 lines. All artillery can target. If this was, let's say, this was the actual battle lines, these fellows cannot shoot at each other. You have to engage to be able to shoot, and then also perhaps later melee. So likewise they're standing opposite each other, but artillery can fire over, so it can bombard across to there. It can also move forwards, and then it will have this close-up, so that's a firepower. Although its combat value is 3, this is the actual firepower of 2, so that's for morale saves. Close-up, it will fire on 2 and bombard on 1. You see this one's more effective at close-up range, but there's less of them. So okay, I'll speak to that in a minute. I'm just showing you the pictures. So, and then finally here's the infantry. They just have 1 value each, the combat value. So what the combat value does is 2 things. It's the number of folks there are as such, and then it's also, like I said, the morale value of the unit. So each combat unit, generals aren't combat units, so that value is not for combat. So the cavalry, the artillery, and the infantry, they have a fire value. Now the infantry's is F2, the artillery's, as you can see, it varies from F1 to F3, and the cavalry's is F1. Now in Bull Run, they have it that F1 means you hit on a d6. So when you're going into attack, you'll roll. If you roll a 6, you hit on F1. The infantry will hit on a 5 or 6, and F3 artillery will hit on a 4, 5 or 6. And the number of d6 you rolled is equal to your combat value. So you have your firepower and your combat value. The combat value does not necessarily represent your firepower. So cavalry F1, but and they have to be engaged to fire, as I said, so they have to be in the same position. I think cavalry get a bonus in melee. They become F2 in melee. I can't remember. Cavalry melee at F3. So normally they only hit on a 6. In melee they hit on a 4, 5 or 6. And artillery only F1 in melee. And infantry also F3, same as cavalry. So sorry, I didn't describe that very well, but essentially this guy will be rolling 3 dice in combat. If he moves into engage, he will roll 3 dice and he will hit on 5 or 6. Every time you hit, you have to mark something. So say they're fighting, he rolls, so he's done 1 hit, so that fellow will be marked with a hit. He will fight back and he scores 1 hit as well, so forth like that. Only not exactly like that. I'll go into the turn sequence in a minute. So these ones, if these are bombarding, they hit on F1, and this one would roll 3 dice, that one would roll 1 dice. So say these are bombarding over to there, then they would hit on a 6, so there's no hits. Likewise, if he decides in his turn to bombard back, he gets 3 dice, again hitting on F1. Okay, he's done 1 hit. And you don't have anything to mark the hits except in the Gettysburg deck, so I'm just using these little things. Now say if this one had moved in to engage, then he would be rolling 3 dice, but he would hit on 5 or 6. So again, he would get another hit that way. And the cavalry, that one would roll 2 dice, as likewise that one hitting on a 6. Now if these fellows had gone into melee in a later turn, he would roll 3 dice, he'd roll 2 dice, and they would each hit on a 4, 5 or 6. So that is how all those numbers feature in the game. So I'm going to show you a little bit here how you might construct a deck. So I'm not sure which are the original decks for the packs that I got, because I got them second hand. They were all kind of like mixed up. So you'd have to check that yourself. But what they suggest is 300 points for the 3 location battle lines, and at least 30 cards per side. If you have a 5 position battle line, they recommend. They don't recommend any extra points necessarily. So you'd still have the same number of cards. But anyway, so with 300 points, what can you do? Well, first let's have a look at the terrain cards. You have creeks, woods, hills, and there's also buildings or villages, and these are special cards. Now the cards are tailored for each side, so the Confederates get these, and this is a Union card. That also, the Union has Stonebridge as a creek card. Now you have no duplicates, so except for special cards, you're allowed 2 of any special card. Because the special cards, although you can buy your deck, you then randomize your deck and draw your starting hand, so you don't actually know what you're going to get. So if you have 2 of a special card, it obviously gives you more chance of getting that when you want it. So I'll take away these duplicate lookout hills that I have, and then let's have a look at what you get. So I've also got 2 of lower bull run, so I'll take away 1 of those. So with creeks, they have a movement limit on them. Now that's very handy, because what happens is if you start here with a battle line here and the enemy battle line here, if I had a creek, when it is revealed, I then move it to the centre in between the 2 battle lines, and that means that only 1 card can come across it each turn. So that's very handy on defence. If I could have just a weak sort of set there, and he could only send 1 card across to attack per turn. So that's what the creeks do. So you have lower bull run and bull run, both with a movement limit of 1 on the Confederate side. However, the Union side, they could get Stonebridge, and that has a movement limit of 3. So it's normally you can have 4 cards in a position, so you could move 4 ahead. That one gives you a limit of 3, so it's a bit better on defence, but it also could assist you on attack. If say on setup we had the Confederates revealed these terrain and the Union revealed this terrain, so we have 2 creeks competing, they both can't compete, you just dice off and one of you will get lucky and your creek will remain. So that's the creeks. So this one's worth 10 points, and the bull runs are worth 1 point each. Now we have the woods. The woods are all the same. They're worth 10 points, and they give the attacker -1 CV. So if the Union are here and the Confederates are here defending, that as they move into attack, they will have -1 their CV. That means they're going to roll 1 less die for each of their cards attacking. So again, that's good on defence. But what it does mean is, because you're allowed 4 cards a limit per position, you could only have 3 other cards in the position with this terrain. If you reveal a creek, you move it to the centre, so then you could add later on. You could add another card and have 4 where that creek had been. Then we get the hills. They are all the same in effect. you've got, for example, Lookout and Henry Hill. They give the defender +1 CV. So the woods give the attacker -1. If I was defending, if I was on a hill instead, I get +1 as the defender instead of -1 to the attacker. And then we also have the buildings, farms, etc., villages. That's +1 morale. So that won't give you a benefit on attack or defense, but it will give you a benefit in your saving rolls. It's also worth noting that with the special cards you can get fords like these. So if, say, the Union had revealed a ford here, and as a Confederate I played one of these special cards, it gives a movement limit of 2. Player movement phase on existing creek card remains in play permanently, and a card can be used by either side. Now, it's obviously useless against the stone bridge. I don't have any other creeks for the Union, but say the Union had a creek there, movement limit of 1, and then I could play this on it as the Confederate if I had it in my hand, and increase that to a movement limit of 2, so to enable me to attack with more facility across there. I've actually done the Union deck. I didn't have quite enough cards for 300 points. I managed to count out 272 points total for the Unions. And that includes everything I've got for them. So I will make another deck similar to that for the Confederates. Slightly under par as they recommend, but then at least we'll have 2 equal decks to fight. So these are all my terrain cards and special cards for the Confederates. The question is, say we've got 300 points, if I buy all of these, that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. That's 60 points already. And the thing is that once you've made your deck, you draw what they call a muster. So the Yankee gets 18 cards and the Rebel 15 cards. So out of your at least 30 cards battle deck, you begin with 18 and 15. So you might not actually have these in your starting hand. If they're not laid down at the start, they cannot be played later. The specials, yes, but not the terrain. You can play them as like dummy cards, but not as terrain. In the latest rules version, you can play terrain at a later date, but not in the original rules. Or you can play certain terrain types anyway. I think it's good this way, so it's kind of a risk. I could get all of these, which is going to give me some bonuses, but I might not be able to use them. I'm going to say, just for the fun of it, we'll get all of them. So that's already 60 points. The thing is, that's going to give me a good chance of getting 2 or 3 terrain cards, because I'll get half my deck out. I should get, say, half of those, so 3, maybe even 4 terrain cards. So I'll be able to start with some decent terrain in my hand. So now I've got 200 and would be 240, but for me that's 212 to buy for the rest. So let's look at the specials. We've got those forwards. Now, I happen to know that my Union player doesn't have any creeks. Well, I could play it on my creeks and suddenly it increased my attack capability. So that's a possibility. Then we have force march, so you can make 2 battle moves. So infantry could move twice instead of just the 1 position. These are all pretty good, and I'm tempted to play all of these. I think not all the fords, just for fun. So sharpshooters, uniform, confusions. This is good. That's train comes in, giving you extra reinforcements. Okay, so let's put all of those into the mix too. So that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So you can see that's 120 for those two, leaving me with 180 nominally, but for me 152 for the actual units. Now the next bit's quite interesting because you have to consider you've got your battle line of 3 positions, and so we're looking at the generals now. I've got some duplicates there. What do we want to do? So he's a good attack general, 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 and then that's a duplicate. Oh, that's interesting. I've got the marked 2nd edition at the top, slightly different coloration. I'll go with the brighter one there. So these ones, though, they're good on attack and defense. But if kind of you want to attack, you might save 5 points and say by that one, say, okay, I'm in this position going for attack, and then perhaps these 2 positions and going for defense. Provided I get these fellows if and when I get them out. So that would be 45 points. Or I could kind of take these 2 fellows, and so attack or defense depending as I need it, but that's going to cost me 55 points. So you have to make a decision like that, or you can chuck this guy in for an odd 5 points at the end. This little number shows that he died in the battle. Oh, and this fellow has a green plus, so I think that is that plus. Yeah, no, okay. So I think that's also showed that he died in the actual battle. Kirby Smith, is that true? Okay, anyway, so that's Longstreet, that's Thomas Jackson, and that's Joseph Johnston. Let's start with those 3. So that's 55, and I might buy in some more, because you're not going to guarantee to get all of these out, and so I should buy in some more later. But if we kind of consider along our battle line, so we'll say we're attacking here, and we're going to sort of be normally defending there. So on defence, I think we can get nice heavy artillery there, and see these are both similar firepower, but this one's only 1 combat value, so only 1 die. This would be 3 dice to roll. And I don't have 3 of all of those. So that's 12-pounder howitzer. There's another 12-pounder howitzer, but it's only 2 of them. And I have 3 6-pounder rifles, but it's only firepower 2 on defence. Non-bombard at engagement range. So I think we'd put that nominally on attack, and then we'll get those 2, and then we'll come back, maybe buy some more. So that's with 12, 8 and 10. So we're on sort of 30, 25, 32 points there approximately. Then we've got some cavalry. Now, the cavalry are interesting because they can do this flank attack where you move straight from your reserve around to the side like that. But and cavalry get a bonus for that, so they're very useful for that. But you have to roll a die to see who reaches there, and so if you only have cavalry, you have to. Their combat value is what you're looking at for the success of that. So if you have a low combat value, it's not likely, but those 2 strong cavalry guys are very likely. So I think I'll get those 2. So we'll have those as like probably both attack on one side, but I'll distribute them like that for now. And then these strong infantry are great because they have better morale and more dice on attack. So I'm going to distribute all the 4 infantry out, and then we'll distribute out some 3 infantry. So I'm going to bring out the highs first because it just, because the weak fellows take up space, where if you possibly get a strong fellow in, that would do better. So what are we looking at? He's not got much. Okay, so they've got 4 each. Let's see what the points are there. So that's 20, 35, 42, 51, 60, 69. So that's about 70. I think that's going to be pretty much everything. So I'll stop and count that up, and then we'll see what we have left after that. Okay, so I've equalised the points in the Union and Confederate deck. I had to take out a lot of infantry, and I had very strong infantry. So what it's meant is that you can see that the Confederate, this is probably not a very good deck. They don't have a lot of unit cards. They're going to have to be very aggressive. They're mainly banking on, they've got so many of these specials. So I think this is not a very well balanced deck, but I'm going to play it. I mean, what I could do is, for example, swap out this 4 guy. He's worth 12 points. I could, for example, swap him out and get 4 1-pointers, so at least they would kind of fill up a space. But I'm not going to. I want to keep this guy, Zouave. So I'm going to risk it, and they've only got 3 generals. We'll have to see how it plays out. So that's the points buying. And I'll shuffle them together, and then we can start out with our muster. Okay, so here we have our starting decks. One thing I must amend, I made a mistake. I said that if terrain cards don't come out at the beginning, you can use them as dummy cards. That's not true in this rule set for Bull Run. It is in the others. What you can use them is just to hold them in your hand and bluff your opponent into thinking you have more opportunities in your reserve stroke hand. So we start with the muster. So the Yankee player gets 18 cards and the Rebel 15. They would obviously play face down, but I'm going to play them face up so we can see what we get. Oh, and for custom battle decks, the muster is 6 cards per 100 battle points. So in that case, the Confederates and the Yankees would have the same. So I guess that means there's some kind of... The Confederates are generally slightly stronger cards, so the Yankees would start with more normally. I'm going to play it as though it's an out of the deck, even though I've built them out of the deck battle. So we'll get 18 and 15. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So these will be the reserve, and you can draw a card from the reserve at the end of each of your turns. So you see that your starting hand, and the games go quite quickly, so you probably won't get through your whole reserve deck in a game. So we'll just see what we've got. Now the way you win a game is, as you remember, you have 3 positions in your battle line, and you win by capturing 2 of your enemies' positions. So we got 1 special card, John Barleycorn. That enables you to send one of your opponent's generals away for a turn or so drunk. We've got 3 artillery. Got lots of generals, so there's lots of choice there. You can only ever have 1 general per position, but they don't count for stacking. And then we've got a nice spread of infantry there, so that's good. So in here, what we're left with, the cavalry didn't come out. Obviously didn't shuffle them well. We've got other things coming out. It doesn't matter if I saw that. Obviously you wouldn't look in normal game, what you have coming out. So I'll set up. Normally this would happen simultaneously, but I don't want to see what the Confederates have got before I set up. So we don't have any terrain, which is interesting. So it's a bit. So we're going to have to sort of. So we're going to say there's going to be attack on this side. So that we'll send in that attacking general with a strong infantry. So we'll put on balance. We're putting heavy force on that side. So we got 3, 3, 4, 4 and a general, so that's 4 cards plus a general. Now what we would do is we would put them down like this to start with. Now because I got a general there, he has to be revealed at the start, so we know I'm not cheating on stacking. I could of course not reveal. No, I think you always reveal a general. General. Yeah, so you don't reveal a general on laying down. Yes, they don't count for second, but you must reveal them if overstacked. So I could leave him there, and fellow wouldn't know what's there until they move into engage. But I'm overstacked, so I will reveal him. But that has kind of given away my intention. So, I might not want to do that. But they're going to go for a short, sharp shock, I think. And then let's spread these out. Probably best to hold the middle. And that's a fairly nice defence there. Heavy defence there. Okay, so we've got 4 cards, and 5 there with a general there. These generals can come out from our hand. So the rest I could have put them down, but I'm not going to. So because this is happening simultaneously, so that's in the hand, and that's in the reserve, and these are down on the deck. And then we'll deal out the Confederates. So they get 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. What have we got? We've got Azores, so infantry. Okay, some terrain, some specials, more terrain, artillery. Oh, lots of terrain, excellent, lots of, but not many infantry. See, that was the danger. So, we can only have 1 terrain maximum per space. So we've actually got too much terrain, but it does give us a choice. So we've got movement limit of 1, movement limit of 1. So what we can do is really restrict the attacker. We could say, okay. Now, I don't know at this point, because we're doing simultaneous, I wouldn't know that he's intending to attack there. So I think what I'll randomly decide is whether to put the bull runs this side or this side. So 1 to 3, it's going this side. 4, okay, so that's going to, the Confederates, the USA are lucky. So I'm going to have the 2 creeks there, I think. And then we're going to have a hill, Henry Hill there, to defend. So these ones are wasted, they will just be held in our hand. That's 20 points down the drain, which I wish I hadn't done, but never mind. Now, in our hand we will also have these. This is great. That gives us 2 cards instead of the normal 1 for reinforcement. This means that we could move across our creek with a surprise attack, giving us 2 cards across there instead of 1. A uniform confusion, and we got another ford there. So in fact, I could do 2 surprise attacks across there. That's quite interesting. But this is the problem. Don't have a lot. So let's put to defend with. So let's put those on defense. there, and we're going to build up our attack there and keep our fingers crossed. Let's say we'll put him there because he's good for defence. We'll hope only one card can come across. We hope we get to draw something pretty quickly out of our hand. So as you can see, because of my deck building for the Confederates, they're not getting off to a good start. But I wanted to do that just so we could see lots of specials come out. So you see, there's the start. Here's our reserves, here's our hands, and here's the three battle positions in each battle line. So once we've done that, before the first battle turn is played, we reveal the terrain. So we can see that Confederates on the hill there, standing behind Bull Run here, so that moves to the middle. It's not actually in this area. And that also moves to the middle. So you can see already we've revealed quite a lot to each side of what's going on. It looks like they're attacking there. These fellows have got weak defences across the creeks. And then we go to the battle turns. So so to win, we have to take 2 of each of these positions unopposed. So remove all the enemy cards. We can also win on what they call envelopment. Now, an envelopment is essentially where engaging stacking. If say these fellows had moved across here and had wiped out this, and then this fellow had moved up here, that is an empty position. That counts as envelopment because they are able to... Normally you only fire a bombardment with artillery straight across, so from there to there, there to there, there to there. You wouldn't bombard from there to there or there to there normally. But once you're in here, in your enemy battle line, you can enfilade fire across here. So if that was there, we could enfilade across to here without having to engage. I'll show you how that works in the game. But if that position is vacant, it counts as envelopment, so we would have that position and we would count as us having taken that position and we would win the game. So you can take positions by being unimposed or enveloping them. So we will go to the start. That is our muster, and that is our deployment. The first player being determined by die roll. So on 1 to 3, it's going to be the Union, and it's the Confederate. Thank God, because I think they need a bit of help here. And battle turns go like this. You start with morale rolls, then you play for combat, then you move, and then you reinforce. Now, in this first turn, because nobody's taken any morale hits, there's no morale rolls to make. Now, in the combat, because no one's engaged, there is no combat, but if I have artillery, I can declare it now. So I would reveal it, and we can do some bombardment, and I'm going to do that. You have, let me just check, because in later rules you can specifically target artillery with artillery, so you can do like counter battery fire, but yes, counter battery. So artillery cards may target revealed artillery at the long range and may themselves be targeted specifically, because normally hits are distributed among the... But so he hasn't got any artillery revealed, so I just roll to hit and any hits will be distributed. So combat, this is the only combat we've got. This artillery, 3 CV and firepower of 1. So he hits on a 6 and he gets to roll 3 dice against only that position as a possibility. So I roll 3 dice, I roll a 1, 1 and a 6. So that's 1 hit. And that hit will be added into here. Now the general can be hit, but only when all other troop cards in a position have taken a hit. And in Bull Run, the instant a general takes a hit, he is wounded or killed and so eliminated from the game. There's no morale rolls for generals. So you can see they are quite delicate, which might be one reason why you would save them in your hand for later. That was a bit risky on here. But now there's 4 other cards, so there would have to be, if say I'd rolled 3 hits, you couldn't put 3 hits all on one card. You would have 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th hit maybe later would go there, and then the 5th hit would be on the general. So he's kind of quite well protected. I'll just check, I can't remember if hits are... Yes, the owner's choice. So the owner will decide who takes the hit, i.e. who's in the front of their line. So in this case, we're going to risk a lower morale unit because we've got the general. So the lower morale means is more likely to be withdrawn from the game. So the Union player decides where the hit goes and he's putting it there. So that's all of the combat for this turn. Yes, there's no other artillery. And now we go for moves. So we could move 1 card over each of those creeks to engage there. Not advisable. We could move these 2, but not a card that has fired. So the artillery would not be able to go. If he hadn't fired, it wouldn't be revealed. We would move these fellows across here, and then everyone in that engaged position would be revealed. We're going to stand firm for now, and so we move to the last phase, the 4th one, reinforcement, which means we draw 1 new card from our reinforcement deck into the hand or reserve. Now, note, one thing I could have done is played one of these at any point. I think there's nothing useful to do except at this point we'll play Orange and Alexandra Railroad, so we get, in our reinforcement phase, we get 2 additional cards. That card's played, so it's discarded out of the game, and we get these 2 Dagnabbit as reinforcements. Okay, so those are useless except to bluff our enemy that we've got a strong hand. That one can be played in from reserve next turn. So that's the Confederate turn. Now we move to the Union player's turn. So we go for morale rolls. So he has to roll for the morale of that fellow. Do we reveal it? Because you don't normally reveal until the position is engaged. So, but yeah, so I think you just have to trust your opponent that on the morale. So he's got 3 combat value, which means on a 1 to 3 on the d6 he will save against that hit. But because he's got this general who's good on defence, that adds 1, so he counts as 4 combat value. So on a 1 to 4, that hit will be removed, and it is. If he had not saved that hit, that card would be gone out of the game. Okay, so that's all the morale rolls we have. Then we go to combat. So again, the Union can do likewise, and they're going to reveal what they've got here. Wise or not, we're not sure, because you might want to save your artillery to protect it from counter battery fire, perhaps until the enemy engages you, and I think we'll do that with this one, because that was so strong. on short range attack rather than the long range bombardment. I think we'll keep that a secret. But we're revealing those two, and there was none there, was there? Yeah, okay. So these are going to bombard across. Notice combat is before movement. So you have to move into engagement, and then the next turn you can fight, which means your opponent will have opportunity to get a sort of defensive fire hit on you as you come in. But of course you can soften up with artillery. So both of them are F1, so they will hit on a 6. One has 3 combat value, the other 2, so that's going to be 5 dice total. They're not on a hill or anything, so there's no modifier there. And well, in fact, that wouldn't be. It would be the woods would be the modifier on the combat value. So we got 1 6, so there's 1 hit on. Okay, it's not going to be the general. So that fellow, although the opponent doesn't know that. So that's all the combat. Now we have movement, and these fellows are going to move across. Now, note, because there's a hill there, that counts, that takes up 1 position, not just for the defender, so that's the maximum for the defender, but also for the attacker. So the attacker can only move 3 out of his 4 up the hill, plus the general, so he's going to move those. He will leave those behind. Infantry can move 1, so they'll just move up 1. Now, the general's going to move with them, and they become revealed as they engage. Note that I could also play a general out or cavalry out of my hand. They could move twice, so it could go 1 and 2 in this movement. So that's, you know, that would have been handy. I could have kept that general as a surprise as they moved up. So, and these fellows are revealed, so we see what's going on there. And that is the end of that movement, and I'm not going to move 1 across. No, I'm going to do a probing attack across Bull Run here. We've got Lower Bull Run here against 2. There's only 1 card here, so the Unions are very curious as to what's going on there. They're just going to send in a weak card as a probing attack. So he moves across, and Confederates looking to see if they've got any specials they can play at this point. No, so now the Union can see what's going on there. And at the same movement, I should have done it before the revelation. We're going to send Burnside across because we got some spare generals with that regiment, the 18th New York, and that is all the movement we're going to do. For now. Okay, and so now we go to reinforcement. And we get 1 card and Centerville. That's going to be useless for us at the moment. So then we go back to the Confederates. They have a morale roll to make here. That's a 5, and he's a 3, but then he's got +2 from Jackson there, so he makes that morale roll and stands firm, thank goodness. Now we go to combat, and you can see, so we get our defensive fire against this fellow moving across. So it's going to be short range with the F3 firepower, so 2 dice hitting on 4, 5 or 6, and that's 2 hits. So 1 hit to that fellow, and that was a bit careless bringing Burnside across because the second hit will go on that general, and he's gone. And then over here we have again F3, 4, 5 or 6, 3 dice, on the artillery, so that's 2 hits. Ping, ping, and then the Zouaves also get to hit, but they're F2 for infantry, because we're not at melee yet, just engaged combat. Notice the general's not adding on the combat value, so hitting on 5 or 6. Ooh, 2 more hits. That is not good for the Union because their general has gone. So you can see it was foolhardy to bring that general out first, but you know, it's also the thing is if he hadn't taken a hit, he would have added greatly to their morale saving rolls. In further games, the generals are a little bit different in that you roll for the effect of the hit, so they're not automatically knocked out. It's quite merciless in Bull Run. I guess we're demonstrating the kind of inexperience of this first major battle of the war. Okay, and so now we go to Confederate Movement. Notice they stay there for now. They won't, although they've taken a hit, they won't roll for save until their turn. At the beginning, the Confederates, they can play a card before it fires, so that's going to go on them in the next turn. The Confederates need to, he's probably going to go. So they're going to just send one fellow in there from the reserve. And that is the end of the Confederate turn. So we go over to the Union turn, and he hasn't got any specials he can play, except for this one. Play any time on enemy general. This card immediately moves to the reserve to sober up, but may play normally next turn. So I think we're going to play that at this. No, we won't play it at this point. We'll see. Wait to see what's going to happen first. So we have to roll for these saving rolls. So he's going to save on a 1 to 3. Saved. They're saving on 1 to 4. And they did it. So they stand firm. You can see it's quite dicey, quite risky. It could have gone either way depending on the die rolls. They might have all been wiped out, but as it is, they all stay. This fellow is only going to save on a 1. He rolls a 6. A 6 is always a loss no matter what additions you had. So if you had 4 and a general with +2, he's still going to go on a 6. So that one's gone. The Confederates have saved the position there. But the Union has more that they can do. They go to combat. So now these are engaged. The Union get to fire. What they could do is declare a melee. When that happens, you get simultaneous fire, and you have to roll morales immediately. Then you get another round of simultaneous fire, roll for morales immediately, and then see what happens after that. So you can see that's pretty fast, furious, potentially very bloody. The Union don't want to risk that yet, so they're just going to fire all these guys. So we got 8, 9, 10, 11 dice hitting on 5s or 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I happen to have 11 here. So you see you can use quite a few dice in this game. We got 1, 2, 3 hits. So that's lucky. The general stays alive for this turn. And then we got these artillery firing, 5 dice on F1, hitting on a 6. Woo, 2 hits. So if it was a general, he's knocked out immediately. Why did I leave that general there? I'm going to say I withdrew him because that is not useful, and I think the Confederates are going to need the help. So, but the problem is now he's got 2 hits on, it's likely to go. So we could have used that general to soak up a hit, but do we really want Jackson just to soak up a hit and get wounded or killed out immediately? I don't know. Anyway, I think that is better. So for sense of gameplay, I'm cheating a bit there. For the Confederates' cause, so that is combat. Now movement. So in movement, we're going to move that fellow up one. He has to become revealed as he moves into position. See, we could move another one unit with one general over there to try and take that position. Really, we would need, but we really need a better fellow than these to possibly save it. I could move up the artillery, but artillery, you need infantry or cavalry to take position unopposed. So I think so. I'll just check. I don't think artillery can capture a position. No, you can have artillery in there. So that's a bit maybe unrealistic. So for example, we could send that artillery across, and that's got a good chance to save. I think we'll do that. So that artillery is going across, that becomes revealed. And we'll send this general across with it. So 1, 2 movement, and then hopefully the next turn it will save any attack against it. We can move an infantry across and take out that position. So the Union are going for these two positions simultaneously. Any other movement? Well, yes. We'll send an infantry fellow across here to see what the Confederates have there, and perhaps he'll get knocked out, and then we would have that position. You can see the Union could win this quite quickly. And then finally, reinforcement. The Union get another general to add to their hand. William Buell Franklin. Okay, so do the Confederates. So the Confederate morale saves. We'll roll these first, so that he needs 3 or less against both those hits. Got saved one, not the other, so he's gone. So the Union have taken that position. And here, so these 3 all have to save, but they've got the defence there, and +1 CV because they are on a hill, which would help them in their fire. I think I forgot that last time, didn't I? But it's also going to help them in their defensive role. So he's on 4 +2, so they're all going to be saving on 1 to 5. So, oh, and he missed on a 6, so he's out. The artillery and the Zouaves, okay, they saved, so they're standing firm. Now we go to fire. So we have F3 there, hitting on 4, 5 or 6, that's 1 hit. And then the Zouaves hitting on 5 or 6, 3 dice. Oh, +1 CV from the hill. So that's another die for the Zouaves, and another die for another hit for the artillery. And then this is engaged, so we get 2 dice on 4, 5 or 6. That's 1 hit on that prolonged artillery there. They prolonged it across the Bull Run. That's a very bold move, and nothing we can do there. So that's combat, and now we have movement, and you can see a very poor hand, nothing to bring in. And you're going to have to play that here. I forgot to play that before. And I'm going to bring him in to here because he has to try and save that, which leaves us with reinforcement. Oh, some cavalry. Maybe the cavalry can save the day. It's only got 1 CV, which ain't that great. So I'll stop there and we will continue when I have a bit more time. Okay, continuing our playthrough of this mini Battle of Bull Run. We are on the Union turn and they have some saves to make. So this one is morale 4, +1 on defence, but no, he's actually attacking because he moved to engage. So we won't get his bonus. I don't know why I put in there, that was a mistake. So he saves on a 1 to 4. 2, so he made that save. I suppose that general could soak up an extra hit, couldn't he? And then here we have 2 hits, save on 1 to 3, no, and save on 1 to 3, I'll count that as a 5, no. So those are both gone. So the Union have lost 4 units and 2 generals, and the Confederates 2 units. But they're still the Union's looking pretty good. They've got the position there, and they're engaging these other 2 positions. Now we go immediately to combat, and what they can do is elect to go for melee, and in this position that's what they're going to choose to do. It negates the effect of the terrain, so the defender will not get that terrain effect of +1 CV. Otherwise that would be quite punishing, because they're closing in the terrain. They're fighting over exactly the same territory. It doesn't really count. They're not standing off engaging. Now this was there to remind me that the Confederate was playing this. So what's going to happen in the melee is they will simultaneously roll to hit and then take a check for morale, and then either side has a chance, the attacker first, to withdraw or disengage as it's called, so you simply move back 1 space, and these fellows would have to disengage into the reserve. You can't move sideways, and then we would go for another round. But first, the Uniform Confusion. Play on any 1 enemy card before it fires. This one, any hits it scores are taken on any other friendly cards in the same position. Resolve the morale and the hits immediately. So he's firing 4 times at his friendly fellow. And seeing as they're in melee, they melee on F3 rather than F2. So they're hitting on 4, 5 or 6. Cavalry would be the same. So they do 3 hits. Oh dear, that was terrible. Against their fellow, a friendly fire. And then their fellow against these have 2 hits. So that will be 1 each to those. And then these fire back simultaneously. So on 4, 5 or 6 for both of them. 3 for the artillery. That's 1 hit. And you have to put a hit on the other fellow. You have to sort of give out hits proportionately as possible, and then 2 hits from this fellow. So now it should be 1 like that, but he's already got 3 hits. Yeah, I think I should put 1 there and 1 there. Okay, and then that card is played, and now we immediately check for morale. So he's got morale of 4. So saving on 1 to 4, he saved both of those hits. He's saving on 1 to 4 similarly, but he's got 4 hits. And he saved all of them as well. Fantastic. Now these guys, they're on defence, so they add their general, so they're saving on 1 to 5. And oh dear, the artillery miss it, so they are gone. So that's pretty close there. Now they can disengage, or these fellows can disengage. If they do, then they will have lost the game, because the Union would take that. So the Union aren't going to disengage, they're pressing the attack, and they really have to stay. So the Union will roll 8 dice. hitting on 4, 5 or 6. 1, 2, 3 hits. So that'll be 1 to him, 1 to the general, and he's gone. And then the third one to him. And then he's firing back 3 dice, hitting on 4, 5 or 6, 2 hits. So that's 1 each. We have to check for morale immediately. So this fellow, 3, yes. And this fellow, 4, yes. And this fellow, 2, and 1 to 3. And he loses one of them. And that's it. Game over, because immediately as the Union have taken 2 positions of the 3, they will win. So that is game over. Say that fellow took his made his saving roll. Because he hasn't taken the position in melee, he has to disengage, so he would disengage back there. Now that can be a bit risky. Say he had, in the meantime, he had brought in 3 infantry units there. He's disengaging back to there. Now that's overstacked, because you can only have 4 units in one position. Then immediately every unit there would have to make a morale saving roll, and any that lost it would be out of the game. But I'm going to say, okay, he failed in his melee, moves back to there, and the Confederates just take that. Now here we will have regular fire. So fire from the Union cannon on F3, and it's 4 dice. 4 hits in 4, 5 or 6, so that's 2 hits. So again, he's gone. He takes 1. You can see the Confederates aren't going to come out best in this. And then this fellow, because he's there, he can do what's called enfilading fire. So he can fire as though he was engaged against this unit here. And there's no terrain affecting that, so he'll just roll 2 on F2, hitting on 5 or 6. That's another hit that fellow takes. It doesn't matter that they're there, they're not affected. And we will get bombardment from here against his own fellow. No, we're not going to do that. Remember, you can't bombard diagonally. So then we go to movement. These guys could essentially move back. No, they fired, so they don't move, do they? So these guys can move in. Oh, movement limit of 1 over the creek, so we'll bring one of those in. And then we can move 1 over from the creek over here. An infantry unit, probably better to send that fellow across. And this fellow is going to move across. No, sorry, you can't do that. This fellow is going into the reserve. And then the next turn he can come out into this position. We do have some generals here. And because generals can move twice, I can move a general from reserve to here, and then he moves again to here. He'll be taking command there. And I'm going to move another general out, just one position into there. And then we have reinforcement, and they get cavalry. Now this cavalry is great because I can use it to flank and either this or this position if it was engaged. Neither of them are engaged at the moment, so that wouldn't be possible. So that's the end of the Union turn. The Confederate turn, we have to roll for morale hits. That's only going to save on a 1 or a 2, and so that would be at the end of the game. I'm going to say they saved, just for the sake of continuing, and then we will roll for combat. There's obviously going to fire back, so he's fires twice and misses, and then the Confederates have a choice. No, they don't have much in the hand, but they do have a cavalry unit. So essentially what they could do with this is they've done combat. Now they could do movement. This guy could move here to engage them. Not wise, as we know, but in this situation, but for an example. And then at the same time, this cavalry can move too, so it can come out of the reserve and move to flank there. Now the way the flank works is he has to roll against his morale, but because he's cavalry he gets +1 for that. Artillery would get -1, infantry it would just be basic morale. So say if this fellow came out on the flank too, he would succeed on a 1 to 4, and he will succeed on a 1 or 2 because he's quite a weak cavalry unit. But you see, it doesn't cost very much at all, so you can buy those in sort of just make up points. So say he moved up, and that cavalry is trying to make that flank move. I roll the die, a 3, so he doesn't make it. He will go back into your reserve hand. He doesn't leave the game. He just didn't manage to make the flank. Now, say for example, that flank was being done here. So say he moved up to here, and we're attempting a flank round here. Now, you would still have to cross the creek. So the movement limit is 1, so he could only move 1, and he could only you could only send 1 flanking unit across the creek at a time. So you couldn't, for example, flank like that. It would just have to be one or the other of them. And also, notably, we didn't have it out, but if, say, from the Union had their stone, if the creek card here was Stone Bridge, the movement limit on the Stone Bridge is 3 instead of just 4 for clear. But if you're on a flank, it's 1 because you can't. He's moving over the Stone Bridge, so the flank's going on the creek itself rather than the bridge over the creek. So that's how that would take effect. So I think we don't need to continue the game because we can see that flank didn't work, and we've done movement, so we go to reinforcements and they get a nice cavalry unit. So he would succeed on a 1 to 4 if he was flanking. Plus, you can also send a general in. In fact, I should have... they don't have any generals, but say if the Confederates had an attacking general like this, well, he's more of a defending general, so he would add 1 to the morale, seeing as a flanker's attack. He would add 2. So if I sent them in on a flank, that cavalry would succeed on a 1 to 5, 3 plus 2. And similarly, if the infantry was there, he would be added in. And if you can, over the creek, you can only send 1. The general can go with it too, because they don't count on stacking. So that would be the end of the Confederate turn. Then we go back to the Unions, and they are engaged here, so they can engage in combat immediately. And they're on defence, so they would use the general's defence factor for their morale save. And so that would be 8 hitting on... If they like, they could choose to melee, which I think they probably would at this point. He's going to be wiped out. We know that. That was already taken, wasn't it? I've lost the card that I had there. Maybe it was that one. And I think at this point what would then happen is the Union would send in cavalry 1 and 2 to reinforce that. So we'd have combat here, reinforcement there. They'd get to draw another card. There's a captain representing the 40th Indiana. And then we'd go over to the Confederate, who would probably lose his saves there or lose some saves here. That would be over. Probably that would be over. And they'd be hanging on by a thread with some cavalry. So I don't think it's necessary to continue. You can see how it would play out. I think what I'll do is I'll stop this video now. I hope that's given an idea of how it plays and everything, every rule point that I believe I've mentioned, even if I didn't play them out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another deck for the Confederates, a more balanced one, and I'll do another video just of a whole playthrough of one game without any fudging, just for fun. And then that will be it for Dixie First Bull Run edition. Okay.